We even exchanged the room. My room, I gave it to Geoffrey Rugano, and then he remained in Coventry for the next year. But good enough, in 2017, when I went back for the graduation ceremony in January, he invited us. He invited me with my daughter to visit him, and then he prepared the Kenyan ugali, a very, very, very tough one. It's different from it's different from what we used to eat in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, because it's soft. But the Kenyan one is tough one, and you need to have a fork and a knife so that you can eat it. But he also graced us by voluntarily to be the cameraman for the graduation event. So all the photos I had, but only fortunately I didn't submit it for final publication, and that's why Dr. Peter Kesa says, why you didn't bring the chapter? It's because it went somewhere else. So all this tells why KU. Okay, you see the collegiality that has been building up. And what the chair has just pointed out, I think is the way to go, trying to extend collaborations between departments. Our history department in Dar es Salaam and your department from this side should start to work together. We have started on individual levels discussions with colleagues, but we need to find ways to institutionalize what we are doing. Why Kenya? This is also nice. Why should you come to present it to Kenya? Why not another country? Kenya has been my second home for me as a person. I've been coming to Kenya for research several times. I've used the KNA, the Kenya National Archives, even before the famous archivists passed on, and I'm sorry for that. I was using the Kenya National Archives for so many years. I've also toured several parts of Kenya for research. I went to Naivasha, I went to Nanyuki, I went to the geothermal areas, the areas prospected for geothermal. So I find Kenya as my other research area. And what our chair, the chair of the department said, that we need to be doing collaborative projects. This is right. And why should a Kenyan be studying Kenya alone? Why should a Tanzanian be studying Tanzania alone? Why should we be localized? Why not do something cross-border? Why not do something outside our comfort zones? Just come to Tanzania and then do your research there, write your dissertation, write your thesis, write your book on Tanzania as a Kenyan. It will be very, very nice. This will be a pan-Africanism in academics. Politicians are doing it very well in advocating political pan-Africanism. Academics are not doing it. I don't know why, but maybe it's time now to start thinking and doing about this. I was once asked, why did you do research and why did you write about Morocco and you are not a Moroccan? You see? So this is like, doesn't mean that to be a Tanzanian, you only need to be Tanzanian in everything. So you don't need to do anything apart from your national geographical boundaries. So guys, it's time to start thinking about this, collaborations, pan-Africanism in academic research, and also moving from our comfort zone to go and do research somewhere else. Now, on the question of African integration, we all understand that African integration is a Pan-African strategy that intends to bring together all African states for the common good of all. And this is not something new. It has been in play for many years since independence of these African countries. The chair Dr. Edwin about the competing camps. He just introduced us about the competing camps. On which way should we take to arrive at what we call a fully integrated continent? And the camps included the Casablanca group. And in this group, you see countries like Algeria, Egypt, Guinea, Ghana, Mali, Morocco. All these guys were supporting an expedited approach towards African integration because they worried that if we leave independent states to start governing themselves first, they will get pride and they will not see the value of integrating, and these African leaders might become selfish. And I think this is what happened 60 years later. But the other camp was the Monrovia group, a group that was supported by countries like Nigeria, Tunisia, and Ethiopia, among others. These supported a gradual strategy towards the integration. But I'm not sure whether the gradualists or the those who supported expedited integration succeeded or not. But what I understand is that we have prospects in African integration, but we also have a lot of hurdles in achieving African integration. Despite all these efforts, we are yet to experience what our four leaders of independent Africa wanted to suggest to have something like the United States of Africa. Maybe in the future we will have this, but maybe not. We are still looking forward optimistically that maybe at some point we are going to get a fully integrated continent. Why no integration? This is very central. One of the challenges, there are several challenges that limits African integration. And this will also now start to respond the last question posed by Dr. Edwin Gimodi, that what are we trying to do? Is it a challenge in Moroccan integration or African integration as a whole? One of the challenges that has prevented African integration has been the question of contested sovereignties. In this book, we decided to deal with the question of Western Sahara as one of such examples of contested sovereignties. We understand that there are several of such contested sovereignties, but we couldn't deal with all of them. But all of these contested sovereignties contribute towards the wider challenge of African integration. Because if you cannot unite in a small block, I don't think it will be easy for you to unite as a continent. Apart from the contestations over sovereignty of Western Sahara, we also have other examples, and you'll bear with me. Areas like you have heard about something like the Mombasa Republic. Guys advocating for Mombasa Republic. Guys advocating the Republic of Cabinda in Angola. Mombasa Republic is in Kenya. The Anjuan People's Movement in Comoros. Tigray Independent Party Movement in Ethiopia. Western Togoland Restoration Front in Ghana. The question of Zanzibar within the United Republic of Tanzania. These are some of the examples of contested sovereignties. And together, they limit progress towards an integrated continent. But as I said, we decided to deal with the question of Western Sahara. For the past 40 years, The question of Western Sahara in relation to the wide African interests has been at the center of academics, politicians, activists, the international community, and international platforms, local civil organizations, human rights activists, and so forth. It is at the center. And when you mention Western Sahara, everyone is like, wow, what are you trying to say? What is it that you are going to say about Western Sahara? And with all this tension, the question of Western Sahara has determined or has influenced how Morocco relates with fellow African countries and with international collaborators and partners over the past 40 years. What is new? What are we trying to say in our book? For the past 40 years, there were two extreme points, extreme viewpoints. The first extreme is the extreme right. And these guys concentrated much, or they've concentrated much on looking at Morocco as being right in her claims about the sovereignty of Western Sahara. They see nothing more than this. They only see that Morocco's claims are right in regard to the question of Western Sahara. This side is always pro-government. So they are advancing the standpoint of the Moroccan government. But the extreme left side, these guys are looking at the opposite of what the extreme rights are proposing and are looking at. And they see like the questions and claims of Western Sahara over their own sovereignty, that they are right. Western Sahara is right to claim for her sovereignty. As I've said, they argue for secession and independence of Western Sahara. Which side are we taking? Are we supporting extreme right? Are we supporting the extreme left? No. In this book, we advance that the Western Sahara question needs to be understood from its roots juxtaposed within the maneuvers of colonialism, neo-colonialism, international political landscape, and the availability of natural resources, plus historical encounters, not only of Morocco, but also of the wider continent. The book does not advance who is right or wrong in the dispute, but we are trying to expound, to catalyze the discussion that for be talking about the question of Western Sahara without getting solutions. And why, despite the efforts, the international efforts, why we don't have lasting solutions for the past 40 years. Yes. We also need to understand that the question of Western Sahara is not an isolated case in the continent, as I have also introduced some of the contested sovereignties that are going on elsewhere in the continent. And maybe you will be aware what is going on today in Ethiopia, today as we speak here. You'll be aware what's going on there. That is not an opportunity for African integration. It's a hurdle towards African integration. Now, what influences the question of Western Sahara, and what has sustained it for the past 40 years plus? The first thing that we try to bring into the discussion is the historical background and culture. The people of Western Sahara share a common history with the wider Morocco. And this has been a major point for the extreme right proponents. They use this as a strong justification to claim that the government position is right. And they claim, they even advance that the question of Western Sahara is undisputable, based on these historical ties between the two, between the wider Morocco and Western Sahara, or the north and the south. Now, when you read the archives, pre-colonial archives, and some colonial archives, Moroccan archives, you know, for historians, we also go to the settled dusts in the archives, and then we unravel the settled dusts to understand what was happening. When you read in these archives, you'll see correspondence between the kings and chiefs from the south trying to correspond with the chiefs, with the monarch. Which shows that before colonialism, these guys were corresponding. They regarded themselves as one. But after colonialism, everything started to change with imposed identities. That maybe you are not part, this part is not part of Morocco. And it's a question of sovereignty. Now, how and why did what we see today start to happen? This was after the historic Green March in 1975, when the people from the north demonstrated. It is said in records that nearly 300,000 people marched from the north to the south to support the independence of Western Sahara. During the march, the people from the north and the people from the south came together as one thing to support the independence of Western Sahara from the Spanish. So until this time, there was no problem. There was no problem. They were one and the same people. And they regarded themselves as belonging to one sovereignty. After the march and after the independence, after the Spanish left Western Sahara, it is when now the troubles and the hurdles in Western Sahara started. It's because those who participated in the general movement, in the general independence movement, is where they started to get consciousness of, okay, we are from Western Sahara. And then a group break out from the general movement, and then the formation of the Polisario Front started from there, and the question of contestation continued from there. Until now, we are still having hurdles, and maybe some prospects. In the question of Western Sahara itself, that contributes in the wider African integration. So, in our book, we are trying to say, maybe after 40 years, should we try to learn from history, what happened in the past? Can we get any leaf? Can we borrow any leaves from historic encounters and try to see how to solve the disputes? Second, the question of the environment and resources is also central to what is going on in Western Sahara. Western Sahara is one of the richest provinces of Morocco. There is huge deposits of phosphate, and you know phosphate is used to manufacture fertilizers for agriculture. In the world, Morocco deposits number 2 or 3, and there is that they are going to have these deposits for many years because they are now attracting very low compared to what is available. So, Western Sahara holds the future of Morocco's green revolution. And this is not only about Morocco, it's all about the continent. I think you'll bear with me that the phosphate that is extracted in Western Sahara, you might also be using it in Kenya, in agriculture. Because Morocco exports phosphate to many African countries to boost agriculture. Apart from phosphate deposits, we also have fishing. The region has the largest fishing ports in Morocco. The largest fishing port in Morocco. And the biggest beneficiaries of the fishing activities in this region are the European countries. They are benefiting from fish coming from Western Sahara. Very little fish is exported to African countries within the continent. A lot of it goes to Europe. What does it mean? What does it mean? This means the question of resources determines the way the dispute is handled. The question of resources is central to what is going on today in the region. And maybe it's going to take us further. It's going to complicate more. The stages towards full integration and the stage towards having a definite solution to this question. All these contestants of arrangements, are they looking to benefit from their resources? Are they looking to secede just because they have resources that they can depend on? Are they having neo-colonial influence and support so that they can claim the resources? The government of Morocco in 2007, I think, brought what they called decentralization. You also became decentralization here. And I think it's a nice way to take the resources to the immediate beneficiaries. Through decentralization, they have launched large-scale developments in Western Sahara. They have a big desalination plant because it's a desert country, so they have rivers. To get drinking water, they need to desalinize the ocean water. They're embarking on building of universities and health centers. And when we visited, we were even surprised because we couldn't see people. We were only seeing houses, hospitals, universities. And then we kept asking ourselves, where are you doing all this? In a brown land like this, and there are no people. We are looking to the future. In our own country, when I go to Dar es Salaam or here in Nairobi, the first thing you see is people, a lot of people. But you see very little infrastructure investment that accommodates the number of people. But in Western Sahara, it's different. You see very few people, but a lot of infrastructure development going on. Now, I'm that we are responsible in this area, in this part of Morocco, and these guys are not in any ways deprived of development opportunities. Third, the strategic location of Morocco is a big factor in the question of Western Sahara's disputes. Morocco is near to Europe. And at some point, some people asked me, where are you studying Morocco? Is Morocco Africa? You are saying Morocco and then Western Sahara and then African integration. Is Morocco Africa? Is Morocco part of Africa? You may see the youth from other parts of Africa going through Morocco. They just want to go to Morocco and then stay there for a short period of time and then move. Because they want to go to Europe through Spain. 2-3 years ago, I think if you are following this issue up, 2 or 3 years ago, when the Polisario leaders went to get content, I think, in Spain, and then Morocco became angry that why Spain was trying to support these guys, and then the Moroccan authority relaxed the control measures, the border control measures, and then allowed thousands of Africans to flock into Europe through Spain. It brought a lot of tensions. So it's like, okay, if you don't recognize us, then okay, we are leaving this. They just come there and then handle them, deal with them. So to deal with Morocco also, European countries also consider their strategic interests. They consider their economic interests. Fourth is the historical mistrusts with neighbors. Historical mistrusts, especially between Morocco and Algeria. As historians, as Africans, following up international politics, I think we understand well what's going on between Algeria and Morocco. The Moroccan planes flying to Morocco cannot use the Algerian airspace. Up until now, they cannot use the Algerian airspace. So you need to go to Europe and then come back to Morocco again. For those following football, you know what happened last month, end of last month, and this month. When we are speaking of African integration, we are speaking it in a wider sense. We don't only need to speak of presidents integrating themselves. No, we are speaking of complete integration, even in sports, culture, collaborations, and so on and so forth. So what happened in sporting arena this month is also a demonstration that the diplomatic relationship between these two sister nations is not okay. The center of the problem that Algeria claims is that Morocco is occupying Western Sahara. But Morocco says, no, we are not occupying Western Sahara. Western Sahara is part of Morocco. Morocco advances that why Algeria is hosting the refugee camps in Tindouf. And these refugee camps holds people who are claimed to be from Western Sahara. So this is the tension. And they have been in this tension for many, many years. I think since the early 1960s. And I don't see how these guys are going to sort this up. But lastly, I think the existence of similar movements in other parts of the continent makes these secessionist groups or movements as part and parcel of our day-to-day political developments in the continent. Although they are limiting the future of African integration. When we see the East African community is expanding, we would also expect an expedited process towards integrating the entire continent. We would not want to see smaller movements within independent countries trying to secede, because umoja ni nguvu, utengano ni udhaifu within countries. If I can conclude, or if I can end my talk, is that the question of African integration needs to be looked at from the perspectives of locally imposed challenges and the global political landscapes. We have our own internal incapacities in the continent, underlying internal incapacities in the continent that limits our own progress. But we also have a big challenge of imposed hurdles through the global system. And we cannot remain in this tension always. I'm very happy, and that's why I come to Kenya most often, because I don't need to think about queuing to apply for visa for Kenya. And now the region has expanded, 8 countries. I'm sure to go to 8 countries without visa. Beautiful. Why should I be planning to go to Angola and then you start to ask me about visa in Africa? With the arbitrary colonial borders, it's a challenge. But although we have these hurdles, although we have these challenges, we also see some prospects. And the important issues that we need to continue asking ourselves in regard to the Western Sahara dispute include questions like whose interest is in the Western Sahara? Is the Western Sahara dispute serving? Whose interest? Is it the interest of Moroccans? Is it the interests of some other people? Is it the interest of the Sahrawi people? Why has it taken so long to end the dispute? How long should we wait to see a lasting solution? What is the role of individual African countries towards helping to solve the challenges of the Western Sahara dispute? And what is the role of the African Union? You see, Morocco ran away from the Union some years back, and then joined back to the African Union again. Morocco was one of the founding nations of the first African Union, of the OAU. But then when they admitted the Sahrawi Republic, Morocco ran away from the Union. But they've gone again to the Union. All these questions point to the hurdles and prospects of African integration. Should we depend on international platforms, on international approach with the so-called international community as our big brothers who will come to help with these internally disturbing challenges in the continent? Are we serious that whatever we call an international community will be in our own interest as Africans? Are we loved so much like that? Do they love us? Hurdles and prospects of African integration. Thank you. So I'll invite my colleague, James Soto, just a few minutes, maybe 5-10 minutes, if he has something to add on the discussion, so we can proceed with the discussion. So we're not going to use your all time. Yeah.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of faculty, students, ladies and gentlemen who are present this morning. I want to thank you once again, as my brother did it. want to thank you for accepting our invitation and for inviting us to actually deliver this talk. I don't need a second introduction because I have already been introduced. But allow me to once again introduce Dr. Maximilian Julius Chupia. I think his introduction was just written, but he has another introduction which if you permit me a little latitude, I need to introduce him. Well, of all that he has been introduced, Max is the sitting president of the Historical Association of Tanzania. I'm saying this because we've come all along with this, chapter. We have been in hurdles and in, having some prospects. And I hope here you once have had the Historical Association of Kenya. I don't know if it's still active or, but I wish the best. So introducing Max in that capacity actually is fundamentally important for you to think and rethink on how we can forge cooperation. Because one thing that I understand is that we do have a lot of these schemes, but we work domestically. I'm not pretty sure whether we have integration, Mr. Chair, of these associations, not just historical association, because we do have mathematicians here. Back home, we have doing fair good and some other associations, and when we have economists here. But one challenge is that we might be doing very well domestically, but are we, collaborating? I think we may be having, some discussions after this session. Yes, thank you. Well, I want to thank David. Where is he? Dr. David? Well, I think you know him, right? That young man. He was crowned his doctorate while he was at the University of Dar es Salaam, attending a conference on slavery and slave trade. Well, I didn't know that he had to attend a Viva Forge. So one day he just spoke to me that, today I'm defending my thing, and I want to become a doc. I told him, oh, wow, that's great. Have you prepared yourself? He said, I don't know what to do. I told him, you are not a doc yet. You aren't a professor yet. So I told him how to behave. I think, Mr. Chair, you attended this session. So if he scored so well, I don't deserve it, but I also need a hand off. And we gave him a space, a beautiful space for him to relax and present his doctoral thesis. And after that, we celebrated with him. So he started enjoying his doctorate in Dar. I feel I'm home. I feel I'm home, just as my brother has rightly said, because during my MA program, I studied with a Kenyan, then Catholic brother, Mr. Mwangi, Isaac Mwangi Kirego. He was my best friend. I used to talk to him, travel with him everywhere. So he was very close to me. So coming here, I find that I'm home. And wherever I'm going, I meet with Kenyans. And I won some research funds together with Kenyans, and we cooperated and collaborated. So meeting you here, it reminds me the beauty of friendship that I have with my friends. Well, just as my friend said, that 5619, if you want it, 56. Just as my friend said, the major problem with us is that we have been doing so much local research. We've been doing so much local research. For instance, we were actually challenging this. And thanks to Max and a few folks who actually opened our eyes, because in masters and sometimes in doctoral researches, one from Thika would go to Thika doing research. One from Nyeri or Kiambu would go to Nyeri or Kiambu to do research. One coming from Baba's place would go to Baba's place. One from Western or Central would go to. So you would just be writing what you know. So Max is from the southern highlands of Tanzania, a place called Iringa, popularly called Isimani. So he went to the northern part of the country, which I think you know it better, Kilimanjaro. So he writes about the highlands of Kilimanjaro, which he does not know the language and the people, their culture, etc. So we count him as having less prejudice in his accounts. So I think it's an eye-opener that we shouldn't go back home to Kiambu, to Thika, to Nyeri, to Western, to Central, to do research. From Nyeri, I think one would go to Kiambu. So also I have similar agenda that from local I want to become international, and that is what is holding with my friend. And this year I'm taking my sabbatical leave, and my agenda is to go to Malawi, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, and South Africa to do research, and KU now, to do research, and I'm happy that I have my seniors here. One senior is working on border disputes, and I think I will come to this place also to join him. So this is my agenda. Well, you know, since I graduated my PhD, I have just been lecturing, and I have just been, delivering talks to national, regional, and international conferences. But one thing that I should tell you for sure, and I'm happy this morning, I've been lectured by the chair. So for the first time since I completed my PhD, today I've been lectured. So the talk he delivered is what I wanted to say. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And so, in that sense, I have nothing to say. You remember that in the wake of independence and the dawn of colonialism, Africa experienced movements, like Katangan secessionism, Biafran nationalism, Somali irredentism, Ewe separatism, and so many other movements, just as our chair said. And so these newly independent states sat to discuss on the schema of colonial borders, just as my friend said. The three movements, the three camps arose: Brazzaville, Monrovia, and then the agenda was whether we inherit colonial borders, we do adjustments, or in Nkrumah's forge the United States of Africa, USA, but that of Africa. So in 1964, by Article 3 of the OAU, we inherited borders inviolably. That is respect of sovereignty and territorial integrity and its inalienable rights to independent existence. And that is the beginning of borders in Africa inherited from the so-called Westphalian model of 1648. For those who are doing history, political science, and international relations, understand what I'm talking about. Now from there, these movements didn't stop. They have just, been reduced in terms of scale, but we still have such movements, whether overt or covert, latent or active. And so much to say, Africa is still experiencing secessionist, nationalist, irredentist, and separatist moods. This is true. Now, what should we do then? And what is our take? And it is these movements that also hinder the larger African integration. If you can not integrate among yourselves at a small scale, how can it happen at a larger scale? Now, this is the question to ask. And it is in that context that Africa has been experiencing what in international relations we call it as a checkerboard set of relations. That you relate well with your neighbor's neighbor, but you don't relate well with your neighbor. I don't think should have five zones, and therefore should have seven zones, and that have 7 countries, and therefore 7 presidents. Should we go there? Should we go back to Kwame Nkrumah's United States of Africa?
Where we have a discussion, so we'll pick out the key issues, and then we'll come to the floor. So, Dr. Fulham.
Hamjambo. I think it's still morning. Good morning. I think join me in thanking the guests. I call them JJ. This is a very good union. Julius and James. That has been a very wonderful presentation of your piece of work. Thank you, Chair and MC, for giving me this opportunity. I think we are soon going to convert this space, a history space, 014, the room where we are in, because we hold seminars here quite frequently, and I'm sure some of our colleagues from elsewhere, students who are here, may have realized this is actually the way to go. I want to especially thank the authors for giving us this rare chance. For the first time, we are having a book launch. I I think this is a great eye-opener. We have been having presentations and seminars here, but we've not had a book launch. I think the question that they are asking us quietly is, what are we publishing? What have you published? And what we need to publish? I think that's a very silent question to all of us. Because as you look back to ourselves, your name can only be made by what you have been able to publish. So thank you very much for giving us that opportunity. I want to make a few remarks, and of course I'll begin by making a confession. When I was asked to be a discussant, I asked myself so many questions, some of which have been answered favorably by the authors and of course the chair. And I shared some of my issues with the authors and the chair about the task that I was our research interests. But hardly in our teaching, of course, in my teaching of African history, to some of our students who are here, my first assignment is usually to make them visualize the geographical diversity of the African continent. Africa is not a country. Africa is so diverse. And we move from South Africa, East Africa, Central Africa, West Africa, and all other parts of Africa. They bring a map and go through the map, identifying these areas and, of course, looking at the geography, which are these areas which were colonized, and who are the colonial powers. And because we are students, we want to also find out when these countries attained their independence and from which colonial power. So this is a very useful point of departure, I think, from this book. They are taking us back into those history lessons. But I must make a confession that most of our history lessons, we've not, and I'm focusing on African history specifically, we've not paid due attention first to Northern Africa, and perhaps more specifically the north-western part of Africa, Morocco especially, and more keenly for those of us who teach African history elsewhere. We have also not paid much attention to Spanish colonialism. We write and talk so much about British colonialism, the French, the Belgians, and the Portuguese. And we have cases and examples. And hardly do we pay attention to what has happened to the Spanish world. And I think I want to thank the authors for really introducing us to this very, very useful discussion. The Spanish and Spanish colonialism in Africa. I am yet to look for the word that describes the countries that were formerly colonized by the Spanish. I think I keep asking questions in class about Anglophone Africa, Francophone Africa, and I keep asking, what about the former Portuguese colonies? How do we call them? My students will say Portugophones. These are Lusophone countries. And now we should look for the answer for Spanish. How do we call them? Now that we know that they existed. More broadly, I think the question that we are faced with, especially focusing on the post-colonial period, is the dilemmas of colonialism, if I may put it, and what colonialism was able to do to us. The question of Morocco and the French Spanish interests is a broad one. I'm sure we have interacted with specific cases. Rwanda, Burundi, and of course, Cameroon has been a classic case. I thought the authors would actually, they have actually given us an opportunity to look at Cameroon. Those of us who have read about Amazonia, the French-British dispute, and of course the breakaway republic, Amazonia. I think these are very, very critical questions that we need to ask ourselves. For most of us, the question of Morocco and of course West Sahara has come to us because of the political developments that have happened in the recent past. Morocco has been a very slippery entity, as one of the authors said, having been a member of OAU, being a founder. It was actually the 14th African nation to sign the entry into OAU. But you see, the West Saharan issue has made Morocco to pull out, and of course rejoin, which mentioned. Another very interesting scenario, which I think has not been mentioned, is that Morocco in 1987 applied to join the European Union. This has been a very, very huge political, it was actually a very huge political statement. Why would an African country apply to go to Europe? And of course, they were given a very appropriate answer. Geographically, you don't belong to Europe. Why would you want to come to Europe? That's how their papers were rejected. So they are in Africa. And I think over the years, and this has been elaborated in the book, Morocco has made overtures to make very huge connections with other parts of Africa. And I think within the broad perspective of African integration, maybe it is Morocco that is leading the way in terms of making this happen. And as intellectuals, I think it's very, very useful that we reflect on this. The second very, very, very interesting political incident, and this is for Kenyans, during the inauguration of President Ruto. I'm sure all of us followed this, which was attended by the West Saharan, the Sahrawi Republic President. And it appeared, of course, to cause a very, very discomforting diplomatic row at that time, because it seemed that we are recognizing, which has actually been the OAU position for self-determination of the Sahrawi. But of course, later on, we saw what President Ruto has done, especially the economic trade ties that have existed. And I think I'm happy that the author talked about the phosphate fertilizer. We benefit so much. I only pray that it's not one of those fertilizers that we are seeing coming to our farmers. But I know that it's a genuine one. So we have actually benefited a great deal in terms of the fertilizer that we receive from the West Saharan and of course generally Morocco. So that settles my issues in terms of why this launch is important for us as an academic exercise, as something that we relate with as African historians, students of history. This is something that is very central to our study. The authors mentioned something about why KU, and I think that was also a second point of reflection from my point of relation to this book. Why, and initially, of course, my questions were, why is this book that is written by two very eminent Tanzanian authors? The book focused on West Sahara, and more importantly, The book is published by a Tanzanian publisher. Why is it being launched in KU and of course in Kenya? I think this is a question that all of us may have had at the very initial stage. Answers have been provided, so I don't need to go over them. But more importantly, I think the fact that we need to enhance collaborations at an academic level is a very useful point that this project seeks to achieve. And Mr. President, allow me to use that title of the Historical Association of Tanzania. This is where we have lagged behind. I'm sure your words are inspirational. I'm sure we, as historians from Kenya, and I think I appreciate Dr. Kinyanjui, you are part of the initial project of the Historical Association of Kenya. I'm sure this is a very useful reflection. So, as someone who teaches African history, as someone who teaches research methods in history, when I looked at the book, I thought I would reflect on three main areas. The first one, very briefly, are the methodological questions that are being raised in this book. And I'm sure the authors have made some reflection on them, but I'm going to, for purposes of emphasis, just go over them again. Then second is the conceptual issues, which are some of the conceptual reflections or insights that we generate from reading this textbook. Then finally, what I consider to be the practical considerations, the practical project, integration, where are we and how are we faring on as historians, as academics. So those are the three areas that I really wanted to reflect on very briefly. Let me begin with methodological questions. And I think as historians, the French scholar Marc Bloch, I'm sure those of us are professor, chair, you know, the famous historian, French historian, who wrote the most important book, The Historian's Craft. What is our craft? What is our art? How do we do our business as historians? And I think if you read this book, the authors have done justice to the methodological questions, where they have been able to harness those files, especially those in Morocco. I'm sure they are in Arabic, and you can notice from the book the translations from Arabic. So you are seeing very great guys, how they have been able to maneuver through not just their own languages. They told me they come from southern Tanzania, so they speak their local languages. They have come to Swahili, they have come to English, they have come to Arabic. They have been able to build these sources and give us this narrative in this book. I think this is a very useful focus. So for historians, we have kept saying the common denominator. We study change over time. So the three major issues that we focus on, time, change, and context. Very useful. And they have given us a narrative that ties in those three elements in this work, but of course on interdisciplinarity. How you can borrow from different sources to weave together a narrative that is really short, clear. This work is only 124 pages. Very short, brief, clearly presented in a narrative that is very accurate and precise. These are the methodologies. They have also raised one useful point. This is especially for our students. James, I think this was also raised earlier by Julius, in terms of the choice of context. Where do we study? James made a reference to Kiambu. If you come from Kiambu, you are going to study gender relations among the Kikuyu of Kiambu. If you come from Nyanza, you are going to study political parties among the Luo. If you come from Ngoma, party politics, or the history of land alienation, I think we need to go beyond this. And this is why I think when the chair talked about the earlier historians, the Dar es Salaam school, the pioneer historians that we have studied in these countries, look at their focal point. And our department really remains one of the key areas, apart from, of course, the emphasis on Dar es Salaam, which I really appreciate. If you look at the key personalities, look at B. Ogot, his early writings, look at the names that have been made in our department. Paul Tiambe Zeleza, from Malawi originally, but he has written extensively on Kenyan history, an economic history of Kenya, among other very, very useful texts on Kenya. Within our department, I think there's a scholar who taught me history of West Africa. Chair, I think you remember him, Dr. Nathan Segomango. A Ugandan national, but writing extensively on the history of West Africa. A very useful contribution. Beyond that, look at the main guys that we have cited. Those who have written extensively on Kenyan history. David Anderson, Daniel Branch, Carol Elkins, and many, many others. Leaving their own comfort zones to come and do research in a fairly unfamiliar territory. The point that is being emphasized by these authors is that for a historian, you only need the space, you only need data, and then sit down to navigate through that data and construct, because that is our craft. And for us as students, I think we want you to move out. If you are from central Kenya, I want you to go to Tanzania as you got the invitation. I want you to go to another part of the world which you are unfamiliar with and do your art and writing. So this is a very useful invitation to us. Away from the methodological issues, I'm very happy about the conceptual concerns on this project, and of course this book. The work basically falls in what we may call contemporary history. Generally, the history, its focus is on the history of Africa in the 20th century and beyond. If you have read the work, and I'm sure some of you will have the opportunity to read it, the earliest focal point is actually taking us to the Pan-African movement, a very, very useful movement in African history during the 20th century. So, if you look at this, I think it's inviting us not just to look at the contemporary history, but also it takes us back into a reflection on what happened in the far distant past of African history. Because we cannot understand contemporary history without paying attention to what essentially happened earlier on in our own history. And I guess perhaps this is also one silent story that we need to borrow from this write-up. Is it possible that we push our narratives, we push our stories beyond the contemporary period? And this is where history is made. We can only make a very useful contribution if we go back in time. If you are talking about African integration, how was it in the pre-colonial period? Because we can build on this if we want to seek for solutions to what the authors have said. African solutions to African problems. So this is where we are. The third and of course most important contribution of this paper is on its agenda, what I call practical insights that we generate from this, centered as it is on the issue of African integration. This has been a very good project and a good aspiration and a good agenda by many Africans. The chair and of course the author talked about the founding fathers of the African nations, Kwame Nkrumah, Kenneth Kaunda, Julius Nyerere, Kenyatta, and many others who really aspired for the African unity. And this is something that grew not just essentially from the Pan-African mode, but which goes back, goes back into history. That if you look back into the history of Africa, look at the trade networks, look at the cultural networks that were facilitated through intermarriages and other forms of interaction. They really point to one thing, that you see African unity is the way to go for all of us. We retain the colonial boundaries the way they were. And this is the resolution that was finally taken up by the OAU. But what is more disturbing, of course, not quite surprising, given what he talked about, the political dynamics, the politics of some of those decisions, is that, boundaries came to define statehood. And it was very, very difficult in 1964 to say that, we want to have one Africa where we have, and the imagination, I would guess, was on who will be the African. If you come to the East African community, it has had very, very good, it has actually made very good progress towards integrating the region, especially in the non-controversial areas, economics, free movement of people, customs union, common passport. Those ones can be rubber stamped and they can pass. But if you look at the main document that established the East African community, ultimate goal was to establish what we call the political federation. So the key question would be, who is again going to be the president of East Africa if this is established? Is it the one who has served the longest? Is it the one who comes from the most economically endowed powerhouse in the region? Is it the one who comes from a country that has peaceful, has encouraged very peaceful political transition? So these are very broad questions. And I guess the book makes very useful insights on this. My reflections, and these are going to be put into 3 or 4 wind up. The first one, and I think this I have made mention to, is the need to revisit the context of the African integration debate beyond Pan-Africanism. How does African integration look like? Especially if we sift through the historical record in the pre-colonial history of Africa. This can give us a very useful hindsight. Look at the trading networks. Look at the ways in which Africans interacted in the pre-colonial period. And I guess this should provide the foundation to the question on what you said as the African solution to African problems. The second is the issue of the colonial state, and of course the configuration of the geographical map, which I really find very interesting in this submission. And as you ably mentioned, I think we have had challenges across Africa in terms of the different claims, countries wanting to attain their own independence, starting their own separatist movements, and so forth. The examples are too many to really belabor. But what is more important is for us to revisit the question of the colonial boundaries. At independence, as James mentioned, the dilemma that most of the African leaders faced was actually on whether they should retain the colonial boundaries, they should do away with them, or alternatively they should restructure them to fit their current needs. Of course, they say they want to retain them in the way they were, but we have seen what that has meant for all of us. Over the years, these movements, West Saharan one is just one of the examples. And it's good they use that example to elaborate the cases with most of the other African areas. The third question that I wanted us to revisit is the question and role of international and regional organizations in addressing most of the issues and dilemmas that African countries face today. As I earlier mentioned, led to the mention of most of these organizations and their agenda. If you look at the articles, they are very elaborate. They want to bring together African peoples so that they can achieve collective socio-economic and political goals. But that's not what happens. They only talk about things that are of interest to the political class. I'm happy the speakers have raised the second concern about the academy. We also need to begin our own movement to integrate ourselves beyond these organizations, because the agenda of those organizations may not really be in sync with most of our aspirations. The third and most useful aspect, and I think this has also been highlighted, is what I may call integration from below. That beyond the agenda that we are seeing from the AU, the ESC, and ECOWAS, and most of these other groups, we are having another set of responses from below, what may be seen as a resistance. Across our common borders, we are seeing movements by communities and groups that want to assert their common identities. They want to integrate beyond what the state says. They don't care. If I'm in Western Kenya, I walk into Uganda just like I don't notice the border, because we speak the same language, we share in several cultural activities, and this happens across African countries. So is it possible for us to begin, as we reflect on the issue of decolonization, to think about this integration that is coming from below, and focus less on what is coming from above? I think we had a very useful case, and this, I think, becomes a point of reflection for Kenyans. The dilemmas of the nation state. What is it that defines you as a Kenyan? Most of us have forgotten, and for very clear reasons, that in the year 2004, the then government, Mwai Kibaki, we started a very huge movement at that time of bringing Kenyans together so that we can assert our own nationhood. Najivunia kuwa Mkenya. I'm sure you recall this. We devoted a lot of resources and money to come up with what they thought would be a national race. All of us have forgotten about this, isn't it? For very clear reasons. If you can move this kind of argument to the African continent and see whether it is a probable kind of thought that we can have. But the major thing, and this of course brings me to a conclusion, is what I consider to be the lie which we live. Especially that lie that has been perpetuated by the political class. Why is it that in spite of all these initiatives, all these movements, when an election is called, you will not remember that this is my neighbor. The only thing that you remember is that this is the person that conned me, took my land from me, and you don't have to waste a minute to hack him. So issues about resources, resource distribution, violence have become very common within our space. And unless we deal with this, I think the dream about African integration will stay with us for a very long time. And I propose just two things that are opening up the space for us to think about this. For a long time, we have held hope. The first one, we have held hope in the young generation. The hope in the young and the faith in the old. So we want the old to go. The young are holding a promise. So we hope that perhaps the future, once we leave it to the young, will be much more promising. This may not be exactly true. I think for those of us who read literature and sayings, we keep saying that when a cow is chewing cud, what happens? The young one will be out there looking very, very keenly. If it's this political class that we are seeing fighting over all these resources that is too corrupt, the young men and young women that we have may actually not be a promise that we can rely on, because they have been watching us. So which is the future for us? James mentioned sports, music, of course, as cultural connectors. These have provided a very, very useful space for us. especially in this age of globalization. It's something that we can think about and open space for the future. There was talk about the visa-free continent. A very useful experiment is here with us in Kenya. We don't know whether it's visa-free for those of us who have interacted with colleagues who come in, or you have been engaged in organizing a conference. We know that it's visa-free because they are paying much more than what they'll have paid if they actually acquired a visa. But we love the effort and the idea that, you know, if we have a visa-free regime across Africa, I think this would provide a very useful space for us to interact, perhaps. So this is something that we can talk about as we move forward. I talked about language, the fortune of a common language. Swahili has done marvelous things for us. And maybe we can build on this. Most of these colonial empires that we have propelled and moved because of language. Look at English, the way it's colonizing the entire world. Perhaps we laid hope in our Swahili. It may also help us grow these connections beyond our spaces. Finally, trading networks. I think very few of us again remember that 2 years ago we had what is called the Continental African Free Trade Area that was signed in Kigali. We have moved away from it. Now there's more talk about BRICS. There's more talk about South-South, North-South connections. Less is talked about these continental connections, especially through trade. Those of us who are higher, of course, one of the greatest works that I love reading, edited by Joseph Nee, and of course Robert Yohane, Interdependency. They have made a very useful point to emphasize the role of trade, economic connections, and how this perhaps hold the key to a peaceful world and a prosperous future. Maybe we try this, we give it a chance. I'm not too sure, but I think this book opens up the opportunity for us to discuss and, of course, raise questions. MC, I think I want to stop there for now. Thanks.
A round of applause for all our presenters today. So this has been, I think, a most provocative session from the authors, the two authors, and the discussant. And I think the issues brought up are quite heavy. What I don't know is whether we have the time to consider all this. So, because we have many things lined up, the authors have to speak to the media, they have to sign these books, and there's lunch, which is getting cold, I think, upstairs. I will allow the authors, if you allow me, just a comment from what the discussant has said, maybe 5 minutes of comment. And then I will come back to the audience and pick questions, because I know people here who are itching to ask questions. Then I will pick a few questions, and if you allow me, you need not answer that. We can interact during the time when you're signing the books and thereafter. So if we can start with you, if I give you 5 minutes to just give comments on the discussant, and then we'll move forward. And you can use the microphone there so you don't have to walk.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity again. I think most of what the discussant has said are just reflections and way forward. Looking forward into the future of African scholarship, looking forward into the future of trying to mentor the new generation of African historians as we enhance collaborations between our two institutions, the departments and the universities, as we invite young scholars to be part of our departments and the research agenda. I think these are the most critical issues. But maybe briefly, for us, you will understand, and then later under the British, you will be surprised that our history is mostly a history of British colonial activities in Tanzania. Very few people are bothering to do the German period because they take this excuse that we cannot read German documents. But earlier this year, we submitted an article somewhere in an American journal, and then when the review comments, 3 review comments came, they also suggested us to read German documents. They just gave us that, okay, you can get this more into from German documents. So we were now to get immersed into looking at the German documents and try to read them, and we use them. So what I want to say is nowadays we have also the help of technology. You can use any language and you can search in any language. This can no longer be maintained as an excuse. We also used interpreters to do the interviews, to conduct the interviews. But also we used translators to get the message from the archival documents, the Arabic scripts. But before deciding which script we wanted, we used some other techniques to know exactly which document is more relevant before trying to say, okay, we want you to translate this. Because if you give it to a translator and then you just leave it, they'll translate everything and then it will be very expensive to handle. So that is important. Going back into the pre-colonial period, yes, I agree with this one, and it's a challenge to all of us as historians. We need to do this because we understand there is nothing that happens today. Everything has precedence. Everything is informed by something that happened before it. So using the contemporary situation and contemporary realities to understand the precedence of what is happening is very appreciated. Lastly, the challenge of colonial borders. This is a big challenge. I was trying to think when the discussant was trying to ask if we are to adopt the East African Federation, who is going to be the first president of the East African Federation. I think you have the answer. You just gave us but you have the answer already. In diplomacy, we use the order of precedence and seniority. So if you use order of precedence and seniority, you already know who should be the first president. And I think because others would not want it to happen, I think they will not be interested to push this forward. The maps and the boundaries informing our current territories, some of them are contested, although they were agreed that, okay, we should maintain the colonial borders, but we still have contestations, border contestations. You will be with me. I think you all understand what is happening in the Migingo Island, disputed between Kenya and neighbor Uganda, or the Tanzania-Malawi border dispute along the Lake Nyasa corridor. And I have an expert on that here. What is the border? So we inherited colonial borders, but we are still into contestations about them. The role of African regional blocs in advancing African integration, we expect this to be the solution towards African-generated solutions to African-generated problems and challenges. So, Mr. Chair, Mr. MC, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Doc. Thank you very much. I know there are many burning issues that we cannot address now, but we have enough time with our guests. There will be time for book signing, there will be time for lunch, there will be time for photo session. All this time you can raise these questions. So I'm going to take only 5 burning questions. Make your question 1, make it very short and crisp, please, so that we pick the questions. Other questions you can ask them later on. So we will start with at the back. Somebody who has raised a hand.
Okay, thank you, the authors, Dr. Swahili version and an English version of the book. And that one, thank you so much for doing the 2 versions. My question is about Africa integration. Did you think or reflect about the role of information communication technology, the role ICT can play in African integration? Because yes, we can talk about the borders and all that, but with ICT, it can be borderless. Did you reflect on ICT in Africa integration? Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much. Next. Can you say your name again? Gideon Wafula. Okay, Gideon Wafula.
Good afternoon. My name is Hainga Okwemba. I work with the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation, KBC English Service. First, I would want to invite the faculty of history at Kenyatta University. You have a platform. I present and host a program, and I've done it for the last 11 years. It's called the Books Cafe. That is the only forum that you have for scholars and writers like yourself. The ones who have benefited from that forum are scholars in the literature department and writers. So I'm inviting historians to come. I'll host you on that program. Okay? So the way to start is actually maybe the chair of the department and Doc Kesa there who actually give a presentation. We can actually blow this one out by having this discussion again picked by the national broadcaster. So I'm inviting you. And then the 2 scholars, I don't know how long you are going to be in Kenya. That is a platform that is also available to you. Now, very fast, let me just, for the students, one of your teachers was actually asking that sometimes people wonder, where is Morocco, Kenya? Let me be very romantic, historical aspect. I was in Morocco about 1 year ago, and I had an extensive tour of that country. And as a journalist myself, my background is in newspaper. When I came back, I wrote an article or a travelogue called In Search of the Kenyan Connection in Morocco. You can Google it, In Search of the Kenyan Connection in Morocco. And basically, what I did was going back to history and knowing that today it is agreed that Kenya is actually the cradle of humanity. Are we together? Okay? And then I read this very famous African writer, Sheikh Anta Diop, also one of the pioneers of interdisciplinary. Doc was talking about interdisciplinary as a very key component in scholarship. Sheikh Anta Diop is said to have been one of the most influential African scholars of the 20th century. He was Senegalese. He wrote quite extensively about the history of ancient Africa. And when I was reading one of his books, he actually says that yes, if Kenya or East Africa is the cradle of humanity, how did then man leave the continent to go and populate the rest of the world? He writes in that book that it was actually, one of the places was actually the Strait of Gibraltar. And the Strait of Gibraltar is in Morocco. Okay? So that's how I made that connection, okay, in search of the Kenyan connection in Morocco. Now, to the scholars, congratulations for writing this book. I had so many questions, but I'll just pick one. In the presentation by Dr. Chihula, you actually talking about Morocco and Western Sahara. And you cited two examples that show that Western Sahara has been part of Morocco. The example that you cited was one, that historical records show correspondences between these different regions. And then the second example that you cited was the Green March of 1975. And I thought, going by what Edward said, that an intellectual or a scholar is somebody who is supposed to face facts and confront them the way they are. I thought this is a very important book, but it would have been very useful for you to actually situate Western Sahara as part of Morocco and cite more examples to make that case even stronger, so that you stand on a position that this is where I stand, and those ones who have an opposite position can actually come, but you make a strong argument that Western Sahara is part of Morocco, and these are the facts, or these are the reasons. But you cited only two. So for me, I've not read the book, but I don't think that you've actually convinced me that you've situated Western Sahara properly as a part of Morocco. And I think that would be a very important aspect on this discourse, especially when you look at the two divergent views, those ones who say that it is part of Morocco, and those ones who say that it is not part. So for your scholarship to be helpful, you actually zero in on one of those two aspects, and then make a strong case.
Thank you very much, Kainga. His name is Kainga Okwemba. He's from one of the media, the main media in this country. Our chairman has to leave. Chair, when you want to leave, it's fine. Feel free to leave. Okay. So next.
My name is Marcy from International Relations, and I have two questions. One is on the issue of divided loyalties, and the discussant highlighted, for example, Morocco applied to be a member of the European Union. And when you look at most of the countries in Northern Africa, they are both members of the African Union and members of the Arab League. So towards the African integration of Africa, will we really achieve African integration when we have a lot of divided loyalties among the states within Africa? The other question I have is on the African Union. And the African Union was formulated on the basis of Pan-Africanism and bringing in the African integration. But when you look at the African Union Constitutive Act, you realize, as Dr. Chuhila was talking about, issues that are rising on secessionist movements and all that. When you look at among African countries, and we're not seeing solutions on these secessionist movements, like now we have Western Sahara wanting their independence. But when you look at the African Union Constitutive Act, we have this issue of non-interference. Will countries of Africa be able to support other countries to resolve their issues within their borders? Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for the presentation, those who presented. I just have one concern and a question. In your view, Africa, I think issues of integration emanate from individual countries. We are suffering from settling our identities. And that's why you can see many groups trying to secede. So if individual countries have issues of not really crafted their identity well, don't you think when we integrate, we'll export these problems to the integrating region? And number two, don't you think integration is a threat to state survival in Africa? Because every other region that you look at, East Africa, there are so many groups, militant groups, that are becoming stronger by the day, funded from outside. Now that there is free movement, like in our case, East Africa, don't you think when we integrate, just the way a decent citizen can come to Kenya, is the same way an M23 member can come to Kenya or to Tanzania and link with other illegal groups? So my question is, don't you think integration is a threat to state survival within these regions? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Onyango. We can go to this gentleman there. Please say your name.
Thank you. My name's Makamuko from University of Nairobi. And I really appreciate the discussion that has been here. This is a very nice place, by the way. And we welcome you to University of Nairobi. And this is a very important discussion which I picked at the last of the presentation. The authors of the book said that they aim to mentor historians, especially young historians, to embark on providing solutions to African problems. And if you look at this country, we have space, we have data, and now us as historians, we are the agents. And I want to know which is the departure point which us as historians, we need to start from, especially in a country where history is considered as a very inferior subject. I don't know where we can pick. And I'm saying this because I've been educated in Central Europe, and I know very much how they value their history. They value their patriotism and so on. So I don't know where we, as historians, need to pick from there. Thank you.
We have been allowed one more round. Please wait. We've been allowed one more round. So what I'll do is I will allow the authors to make a comment if they wish, and then we can go for one more round of questions. Is that okay, Chuhila? Okay. So the author and even the discussant, you can make comments, and then we can go for one more round.
Thank you very much. I will just pick 2 issues or 3, and then I will leave the rest to my friend. And I will start with the last one by UN student. History is considered as a very weak subject. I think this is a popular view about the subject matter of history, because history is regarded as dead past, and people normally during admissions, if you are seeking to be admitted into beer history, you would be just asked then what would be your relevance, and what are you going to do? Think about the question of employability. So I need to tell you that that is wrong. History has a lot of sub-branches. I do diplomatic and military history, right? And I have helped actually in negotiations, and I have done a lot, yet I'm a historian. Marx is an environmental historian, has written a lot, has won some prestigious research grants, has traveled. Yet, he is a historian. Now the question is, how do you position yourself in scholarship? You can be an economist, you can be a mathematician, you can be a physicist, you can be anybody, but how do you position yourself? That is what matters. Do you hustle? Do you see relevance? So I need to tell you that history is not dead. And you can study history from any angle that you want. Environmental history, diplomatic history, military history, social history, demographic history, medical history, etc., etc. So that is narrow perspective. That is narrow perspective. And to talk about a question raised by Gideon Wafula on borderless, I'm interested in this because I'm a border scholar. There is debate whether and one side, one side there is Ali Mazrui and the others. The other side by Newcomen, David, and others, that whether should we open borders or close borders? Should we have borderless world, especially in this era of growing global ontology, the era of globalization? Do we really need borders? There is no one answer to that. There are pessimists and there are optimists about the question of borderless world. There are those who argue that if you open up borders, you become a borderless world. How would you control rebels, insurgents, control your own people, control your resources, control your income, etc., etc.? Then there's no point that should we open up borders. And there are those who say, well, we should open borders, let people get in free, exchange ideas, knowledge, etc. So there is all that debate still going on, and there is no answer. But if I may attempt to ask you a question, that our borders secure enough to be opened up? I think you may get the answer. Lastly, about the question of African integration. Well, it is a bit tricky, and the question that students of IR, international politics, etc., would ask every day. If you read a book by David Reynolds, One World, Divisible, there is no one world. There is no one world. It is divided. And in Africa, we are divided into Anglophone, Francophone, Lusophone, Arabphone, etc., right? And some with very, strong ties with the former colonial masters. Some with Lisbon, with UK, etc., etc. Now we are divided in that matter. Now, can we integrate? It is possible to integrate, and that's why we are talking about hurdles and prospects. There are really problems, but there are also potential prospects. We still need to have conversations. Let us have conversations so that we reach to the point integration. Lastly, about the same question by Dr. Onyango. If we invite everybody in integration, I think we are talking from a skeptic point of view. Because yes, we aren't one, we are divided, as I've just said. We have countries which are war-torn, which scholarship has named them as weak states, fragile states, etc., etc. Students of IR and political science understand what I'm talking about. Weak states, fragile states, etc., etc. We still have them in Africa. But there are also in other parts of the world, not Africa alone. The tendency is to look that the problems confronting Africa are just in Africa. They are nowhere also existing. Now, there is such skepticism. Should we invite everybody into the equation? And I think sometimes when we admit certain nations into EAC, I'm pretty sure that you have been hearing about skepticism, right? When we admit Rwanda, oh, come on. Rwanda experienced genocide, right? So how is it going to be? How is East Africa going to be? African community going to be? When we admitted Sudan and Somalia, right? Then, there has been a lot of noise, nuisance, etc. But now the question is, if you leave them where they are you also safe? So what is the best solution? We still need to have conversations about that.
Thank you very much. I'll be very brief. Gideon on ICT, yes, we are already borderless in terms of ICT. And being borderless in terms of ICT doesn't mean that we need to abolish the physical borders or physical boundaries. And I think politicians would not want this to happen. You should take note of what Dr. Wekesa just said here about how politicians think of their countries. So yes, we are integrated. We are almost integrated already in terms of ICT. And M-Pesa, we can receive M-Pesa from anywhere, from Tanzania, I can receive it from Kenya. Yeah, so when the internet shut down in the past 5 days, everyone was like, wow, what is it? And I was trying to ask, how did people live before the internet? It's like everything is on the internet. So I think we are already integrated, but the physical borders will be maintained. My brother from KBC, kwanza unataka kuanzisha vita, my brother. When you start to say the cloud of humankind is in Kenya, unataka kuleta vita hapa. And I'm not going to discuss that, but we'll continue to chat. I liked your optimism with the scholars, and because our colleagues here from Kenya have this forum, I think you need to use it. Historians are always afraid of the media. You will always see politicians going to media, but historians know. We just want to talk less and then we don't want to be seen anywhere. So even when you said KBC, wow, KBC. I used to listen to KBC radio when I was very young. Ilikuwa na nguvu sana kuliko radio Tanzania. So mpaka kijijini kule Iringa, you would hear KBC. Na lazima waanze mtukufu Rais Daniel Arap Moi. And then that went to our second president, Mwinyi, who also wanted to be called Mtukufu. So thank you for coming. Your question that we need to cite more examples. Yes, I agree with you, and we did it in the book. So when you read it, you'll get more examples. You can even read a section in chapter 2 that discusses issues related to culture and issues related to cultural identity and practices. Divided loyalties, yes, in connection with the question of non-interference of internal affairs, whether these are limitations towards African integration. Yes, I agree, 100%. And that is why we are discussing of hurdles and prospects of African integration. Whether integration is going to be a threat, yes, it will be a threat, but it doesn't mean that we don't need to integrate. We need to integrate and increase control measures to control illicit movement of people and goods. Yeah, so let's integrate, but let's have checks on who moves where to where. The last point, history is not valued. Yes, so of course. I'm happy that in Tanzania during Magufuli's time, there was a move that we need to teach Tanzanian history. And this move did not die with the passing of Magufuli, but we have started something called history and ethics, so it's going to be taught as a subject. I don't see this as something that upholds history. I see it with some optimism, but skepticism too, because what is proposed to be taught is elitist, statist history. Okay, the success, achievement, government over the years. Yes, and to me, of course, it's part of history, but not history in that sense, because you are forcing people to learn only the success of the government. But we know if there are success, you also have challenges and failures. Yeah. So, but we should not keep quiet. We should keep arguing and saying. I'll give you one example. My colleague also gave you one example. One of our colleagues did a very nice historical research in one of in Mara region, where pastoralists were disputing against one another and were killing one another for many years. And then he did a master's dissertation. When he finished the master's dissertation, at that time, people were fighting, killing one another, stealing each other's livestock. And then the former IGP requested the dissertation. And when they read it, wow! So you have all these evidence and with all these suggestions, why can't we use this? And then they asked him, okay, we need to work now. Let's use your research to solve the problem. And we will empower you to do more research and publish more. But what happened, although they benefited from that research, they didn't go back to the author. They used it, and then they dumped him, it's there. But what we say is, yes, it's history that gave them the solution. Yeah? So we should not feel like very inferior. Kwani, those who are doing physics and chemistry, what are they doing? If we need to import a needle from China, sindano ya kushona kwa mkono, import from China. Sindio? Nyinyi mnakiona cha sindano hapa? Sindano hiyo unatumia, una import from China. But physics is there, mathematics is there, everything is there. Okay? So we need to push ourselves, but keep talking. Don't be afraid of the KBCs when they come to you and ask you to give a comment on something. And the guy from KBC, I think you should be coming to Dr. Wekesa, because he wants to see the present from the eye of the past. And for you as a journalist, that is a nice perspective. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay. Make it one question. I will only pick. Come and start there. make it just one question. I will only pick the questions, and then we have been told lunch is ready, and there are books to be signed. So as our guests sign the books, please make your question very brief, because we'll pick your book and then we go for lunch. We want everybody to eat, and we want everybody to get a book. So please, let's go.
Thank you very much. This is Tabitha Osoro from School of Education, KU. And my question is one. You mentioned about oral sources, and I'm interested to know whether in your methodology, whether music, poetry featured, and how important and what kind of information you're getting from that area. Thank you very much.
Here, please. And then from here, you can go to the back.
Thank you very much for that the presentation and the ideas that you have shared with us. Mine is very simple. Basically, probably you need a comment or you reflect on it. So, as Africans, how do we strive for self-determination and talk about genuine human rights and peace? Can we cure disintegration using subtle and forceful methods to unite Africa? That is the way Russia is doing. That is what Morocco, I suspect, is doing to force its will on Morocco. Or Tanzania is doing, of course, to ensure that Zanzibar remains under its control. And I want to give you a very good example of Ethiopia. When 1952, Haile Selassie was given, or Ethiopia was given a mandate by the United Nations under the Office of Trusteeship to nurture or to take care of Eritrea after Italy was defeated during the Second World War. The temptation was that Haile Selassie trying to unite, to integrate actually Ethiopia into Eritrea into Ethiopia. And of course, this, you know how it has led to wars that are still current. So, on this, can these handles of the handles of self-determination be surmounted, and how genuine are the prospects? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ngari. Go to the back.
Itifaki zote zikizingatiwa. Hamjambo. My name is Stephen Miner, and I have a question to the authors. I want to draw your attention to the economic environments and histories in relation to integration. And globally, you've seen how companies like in Germany are migrating to Austria because of the different tax brackets. And it's also recently in US, you have companies migrating from California to Texas. So I want to ask you, in your observation, to what extent do the economic prospects and situations of countries serve as a deterrent or catalyst to the African integration? What is your observation? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next person.
Thank you very much. My name is Michael Macharia, a member of staff. I do want to appreciate the authors for this timely release of the book on African integration. It's what I'm studying, and as a PhD student, one of the issues that I've encountered is the problem of a proper theory to study African integration. And the theories that are there are Eurocentric. What is the way forward? How do we study African integration without a proper theoretical framework that fits and describes the ontological issues that affect African integration? Two is the focus on Western Africa, or Western Sahara, sorry, and how it relates to the rest of, to Morocco and the rest of Africa. It's a question of the multiplicity of identities that have characterized African integration process. How do we then try to understand or to address the question of the multiplicity of identities, be they legal, be they cultural, be they regional in terms of the blocks that we have that have become a great obstacle to the realization of African integration. The question of borderless Africa, yes, security concerns are there, and they will always be there. But that is the way forward for Africa to address its developmental concerns. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just to add on to that, give to the next person. Just to add on to that, to Hila and Zoto. In a visit to Morocco last year, where we were doing an SSRC activity, we were told quietly, those of us who are trainers there, not to raise the issue of Western Sahara, the Sahrawi. And we were training students from all over the continent, talking about all manner of things, including identity. So this question, I think, is pertinent. And our hosts told us you can talk about many things, but when it comes to this issue of Western Sahara, don't raise it in the forum here. And also I noted what you said, that the Moroccan government officials were very eager to make collaborations with those of us from the south, from Kenya and these other countries. And they introduced us to many bodies and many organs, some of which they are funding, you know. And they were very specific in the case of us in East Africa with this, what is called radicalism or radical Islam, and whether we could form any collaborations on that line. So I found it very curious. First, the effort of the Moroccan government officials to create these networks. They were going out of their way to do that. And when we were told quietly that we should not raise this issue with our trainees, with our students, the issue of Western Sahara. So we'll pick more questions and then we can go to the next part. Yes, you can ask your question.
Good morning. It's already afternoon. Thank you. So my name is Stephen Karanja. I'm a student in School of Pure and Applied Sciences. And I'm interested in writing, so that's why I attended today's event. So my question is, did the author have in mind, because we're talking about Africa, did they have in mind the concept of promotion of African languages and culture? Thank you.
Next person. Okay. If that is the end, please let's appreciate warmly our guests for this very good presentation and a book that they've given us as a gift in this university and in this department, where we have hardly touched on this question in our areas of study. So thank you very much, and a round of applause to them. So as we come to the end, I will give direction on what next. We have two important things to follow. First is a book signing, and every person who is here will get a book. And you choose whether you want a book Swahili or whether you want a book written in English. So you will take the copy you want, and you will come and pick them from the authors as they sign. So make a choice on that. Secondly, so this is the order. After you pick your book, you will be given a mail card on the doorway there, and then there's somebody else who will show you where our restaurant is. It's just upstairs here, and then we can go and have. Yes. So just pick your card and you find your way upstairs here. So this is the order of getting the books. We have guests who are not from KU. University of Nairobi, Kainga Okwemba, and others. So our guests will come and pick their books first, greet the authors and take their book, and then you'll be given the meal card and you'll be shown the restaurant. After the guests, we will go to the staff. All staff members of KU are here, and there are quite many. the staff members, please follow that. You will come, pick your book, and then pick your meal card, and then onwards. And then finally our students. So if we follow that order, I think there will be, things will go on well. So once again, Dr. Felicitas, do you want to release us to the word? Do you want to help us close the meeting with a word of prayer? Okay. So Dr. Felicitas will give us a word of prayer, and then we will proceed as I've said. Welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Biegon, and thank you, everyone. I didn't intend to say something, but I want to thank our authors, the two J's, James and Julius. That was awesome and inspirational. And I also want to pick up the challenge about the Historical Association of Kenya because it was mentioned. The Historical Association of Kenya, it would be a sin of omission if I didn't mention it here, and because I was prompted to by the very able discussant. At one point in history, I happened to be the Secretary General of the Historical Association of Kenya when I was in a different university but within Kenya. Then we gave the mantle to somebody else in another university, and unfortunately, because it is very, very unfortunate, it happened, the light went off. But we are going to take up the challenge. We've been thinking about it in the department. We talk about it in every meeting that we hold, and we are going to rejuvenate the association so that when we hold our hands in the integration of the intellectuals in the region, we will be having a platform, a forum, the Historical Association of Kenya, on which we can discuss. On the point of discussion of today, it was very appropriate to be talking about integration when you're talking about the struggle of Palestine being recognized by the UN. So the issues of integration are very, very pertinent in the world today, and the internal contradictions, the internal tensions that we as the hurdles that we have are so intense, but this should not dissuade us from continuing the narrative, the conversation of what puts us together than what pulls us apart. So, wandugu zetu kutoka Tanzania, tunawapongeza, tunawashukuru na kwa kuleta huo ujumbe katika hichi chuo chetu kikuu cha Kenyatta, na tumefurahi sana kuwa host. Asanteni sana. We had jumped the gun, so we go back to the program, and then I'll take my slot. Thank you.
Asanteni sana. Mine is very, very brief, just to give vote of thanks for all that has happened and taken place here. We want to thank the Almighty God for giving us this opportunity to come and discuss the issues that were raised. We also want to, when this issue came up in Dar es Salaam, as David was there, he contacted me, asked me, can we be able to hold this book round here? I said, come back and agree about it. So just 2 weeks ago, he came up with, we decided to actualize it. So I want first of all to thank David and the team in Tanzania that came up with this beautiful idea that we have this round here. Number two, I want to really thank the Department of History and those who are in charge of organizing this very important seminar beginning with the university management, the Department of History, and everybody who actually participated in this. Now, now that we are here, I want to thank the people who are in this room. Number one is Biegon, who was our MC. Many times we don't thank our MC, and I want to thank him for taking us through very, very well. Actually, he told us about the eminent scholarship in Dar es Salaam. The School of History in the University of Dar es Salaam has produced eminent scholars. You forgot Isaria Kimambo. For us who believe in those histories of community, he was a contemporary of Ogot, and he did wonderful things there at Dar es Salaam. For those who are actively politically oriented, especially the Marxists, Walter Rodden being there, Shivji, I think, was a lawyer, isn't it? Yes, Shivji was a lawyer, but he was actively involved in the Pan-African debates, and especially the colonization of Africa, using the socialist model of governance. Well, of course, there were those others who were not, but the debate were very good, and therefore, on behalf of the History Department, we want to thank that we have benefited from scholarship by people who went to the Dar es Salaam school. Now, the issue of integration was actually spoken into in details by our two speakers and authors of the book today, and we want to thank them for having done a wonderful book. The one thing that I like about it, say this is not a book about saying so and so is right or wrong. It is for us to make judgment. I think that is the key thing, is that we look at the issues. They told us to look at the issues affecting Africa. What can bring us together? Then debate them until we come to an end. Now, our discussant, Dr. Wafula, gave us some interesting perspectives, very interesting perspective on methodologies, and the best way that we can get together, whether at the local level, community level, or at international level. We can begin our integration locally, and then go up, upscale it to international. And as historians, I think, and as members who love Africa so much, we may decide to begin by forming our local association, Historical Association of Kenya, integrating it, African East African Association. Then we can also have an African Historical Association of Africa. I think that is somewhere you can take us. At least you are there. There are other people whom I may not. The media is here. People from other institutions. You who came here to listen, I want to thank you very much. I want to finally, I think, invite Dr. Kenyatta to come and pray for the food. Yeah, so that all is well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ngare. May we arise? Let's believe and pray. Father God, we thank you this afternoon for having taken care of us and brought us this far. We thank you for this great institution and for the noble calling that we have to prepare our prosperity through formation. We thank you for our visitors, Maximilian and James, for having thought about even this university, and in particular our department to come and launch the book here. Father, may you bless them, may you increase them, even as they continue doing the good work of formation, knowledge production, and dissemination. Father, we thank you even for our department, for our chair, and for all the faculty. We thank you for our students. those from the department, and from the university, and even for the faculty that is in Kenyatta University. We thank you even for every person, every institution that is represented here, the British Institute in Eastern Africa, the media houses who have come to celebrate with us and to share the joy with us. May you remember them, may you expand them, may you increase them. Even for anybody who has played a part in this organization of the day, bless them and remember them at their point of need. As we disembark, may we go with your blessings. And before us is a meal that has been prepared. Father, may it be of strength to our bodies. May you sanctify it so that we may be able to get strength to serve you better and to proclaim your word. And we pray this, believing and trusting in Jesus' name. Thank you.
Our guests can come and pick your book. Those who are not from KU, University of Nairobi, come and pick your book. Okay, if we can.
The melanin queen.
Okay, we can carry the discussion on afterwards.
The melanin queen.
Okay.
The melanin queen.
Okay, let's move on.
Sisi ni wale tuliosaidiwa.
The signed ones, they already signed. Okay, they want to say hi and then you can greet the author and then you go. Okay, sawa. Okay, all our staff members, all the staff members can follow. Let's move, please. Let's move, please. Yeah. Thank you for coming. Okay, you can move. Yeah, you can say hello to the authors and then pick the book over there. Yeah. Okay. Sawa. Amekusainia? Amesaini naye. Sawa, usiende kabla huja. Ndio na historia. Alisoma karibu sana. Msiende na kuja huko. Let's move please. Please make it faster a little bit. Make it fast. That's a very long conversation. Or this one. In the history department. Dr. Eli. Just a minute, I bring him in. Any of those authors.